And I am delighted to be here with all of you tonight. In Shaker Heights, we admire Cleveland Heights. Many of our residents say they wanted Shaker Town Center to look just like Coventry, but without the noise or the traffic or the kids. These are principles that are difficult to reconcile. I was indeed one of the first founders of First Suburbs Consortium with Art Brooks. This is a group that was ably led by your own Ken Montlack, who is a gifted facilitator. And what we were trying to do is counter mindless urban sprawl and the state's refusal to reinvest in older communities, and also try to change the minds of consumers who are so obsessed with low taxes, large lots, and absolutely new homes with gorgeous hollow doors. We didn't do so well. I concluded words don't work, which is why I'm now into photography, but that's a different story. I think as you think about Cleveland Heights, the first step is thinking about assets and weaknesses. I think you all have very well identified what the assets are. But once you've identified them and boiled them down, you have to sell it over and over and over until you're sick of listening to yourselves. And that's why elected officials can't do it alone. A, we don't trust elected officials too much in this country anymore. But B, you just need more voices to move a whole community. And I think you all are here and you're trying to figure out how to be that voice. And you have to admit that tastes change. So what is it you're trying to achieve, and how do you attract the people who are going to help you achieve it? I also think the hardest part is to be honest about weaknesses. We didn't discuss weaknesses, but you'll have to get to that at some point and be really honest. Our consultant in Shaker, who were just very gifted, Urban Design Associates, used this exercise. They put up a huge map of Shaker Heights and gave everyone green dots and red dots and said, put the green dots on places you love, which tended to be the parks and the schools and the gorgeous architecture. Put the red dots on places you hate. And the red dots were all clustered on two places, the two commercial areas. The Chagrin-Lee Avalon that Paul has already visually drawn very beautifully, and the Van Aken district, which is in the middle of a complete makeover. And the consultants got up and said, you know, we work all over the country. We're so thrilled to be working in Shaker Heights because we went to planning school on Shaker Heights. We have gotten together, and he put up pictures of the Warrensville-Van Aken intersection. We have reached agreement. We have never seen a place as ugly as this. This is before a crowd of several hundred, and everyone started laughing. So we now knew what our weakness was and what we needed to start working on. That leads to the process of moving a community forward. I think you first have to acknowledge to yourselves and with residents that change is hard. It's scary. It's unknown. And you're going to get a lot of resistance, and therefore endless community process is necessary. And you've got a resident here, Joyce Braverman, who's pretty good at community process, so you ought to pick her brain. It takes time, and elected officials cannot do it alone, because you have to be having constant dialogues, and then the plan shifts, and then you have a dialogue about the new plan, and then it shifts again. It is never ending. So I think you've identified what I would describe as Cleveland Heights' assets. You're hip, you're edgy, you're engaged with Cleveland and the culture of University Circle, you've got great old architecture, and you are authentic. And generations X, Y, Z all want to live in authentic places. So tell me why they're moving into Tremont and Ohio City. So that's your first challenge, and it's not an easy answer. I don't know what it is. But where will their second move be? And we need to make sure that their second move is to the first ring suburbs, not out to homogeneous urban sprawl. And that's but you need these folks for a sustainable community. So you have to figure out, how do you get them? What are your weaknesses that aren't getting them? And go after it. Now, in my experience, developing a master plan is the crucial first step, and you've already done that, so that's terrific. We had one too. Ours was broad enough. We finished ours in 2000, and we've built successive master plans on that first one on housing, one on transportation, one on economic development. So everybody knows that it all fits together and it's coherent. That is crucial for when the residents get skeptical. And then you have to convince the community, who may not have been involved in developing this master plan, that it's actually a good plan and will take you to a better place. Because you're trying to attract younger residents who want to live in Cleveland Heights, who want to pay the taxes, who want to work for it, and want to work, live, and play in Cleveland Heights for future decades and generations. Then, after you've done that, the hard stuff begins. Basically, you are then in the business of crafting the details of the vision that the master plan has laid out. And I believe that crafting the details means lots of little projects so that each neighborhood is affected. You're starting, in my view, starting with the weakest spots, because we're only as strong as our weakest link, but you're doing it in a way that strengthens the fabric of that neighborhood. And I gather from talking to Bob Brown that you've used one of the great mechanisms for building trust for these little projects, and that is to take some people out who are planners or architects or good at drawing, and they listen to a neighborhood talk about what is needed in that neighborhood, and they start sketching and say, well, you know, we could do it this way. And they say, no, that won't work because, and then you rip off the sheet and start a new sketch. And by the time that process is ended, the people feel heard, you've probably got a much better idea, and everybody's ready to move forward. So it's much more than words. And it has to be constantly interactive. Our consultants use the term acupuncture, that you're going into a community and you're just doing little changes that affect and strengthen both that neighborhood and the whole. And I loved that metaphor. Then you have to attract developers who get the culture of Cleveland Heights, and this isn't so easy either. So the city has to be nimble and quick and responsive and get all these code changes that are needed for the project, but the community has to turn into a cheering section. And that's where Future Heights comes in. And as you do that, you're continuing to work with the neighborhoods. Now, as mayor, that is all I did. I talked and I talked and I talked. But that's how you move a community to something good. So I didn't pay attention to the time. I'm going to tell you just a few stories and maybe we can get back. My first year in office, two developers, whom you know very well here in Cleveland Heights, came and said, we've bought this parcel on the corner of South Park and North Moreland. Can you visualize that just before you go down the hill? We want to put up an apartment building. I said, no. We do not need any more apartment buildings. We've got them lined up on Van Aken. We just went through a strategic plan, and what the residents said is they wanted empty nester housing connected to look like Shaker mansions. So they said, okay, we can do that too. So they went and hired this architectural firm that Paul Volpe led, and he assigned a great architect to this. And if you now drive down South Park and take a left on, well, you'll probably go straight down the hill, but the building that wraps around that corner that looks as if it's been there forever, Mike Cato in Paul's office designed that building. And I thought, great, this is going to be such a strong start. Well, we had two young women on an adjoining street who had just moved to Shaker Heights and knew that new construction is always shoddy and always brings down property values in the neighborhood. And they were really good at PR. So they were in the Sun Press on a weekly basis, and their children's lives were ruined, and oh my goodness, it was on and on. And they brought in a law firm from Washington, D.C. that organized a referendum against this zoning change. So in my first year of office, I had just run a campaign to get elected. I had to run a second campaign to defeat this referendum. And who did it? The citizens. I had nothing to do with it. They came out, they worked. It took us 7 or 8 months. Lo and behold, it turned out to be a great education process for the whole community, and we beat them 3-1. And I learned a lot too, I must say. When we started that project, the houses on the adjoining street that were going to be going down the drain were worth $250,000. They're now worth $350,000 and up. So never give up, I think, is the point of that story. Then we have a starter neighborhood called Moreland, which is right on the Cleveland border, and there was huge mistrust in Moreland. They've been waiting to be given back to Cleveland for decades. And so they weren't so sure that they wanted any changes in their neighborhood. But we went in, and with these drawing exercises, we learned that the neighborhood is aging. They want empty nester housing. They want it on a first floor, and they want some panache in their neighborhood. So one of the sketchers said, well, why don't we put a median strip right down the street we were talking about, like Fairmount or Shaker Boulevard? Well, what a great idea. Everyone loved that. And then the neighborhood was behind it. Now that idea has evolved, and we're now doing much more with live work behind the dealership on Lee Road, but it demonstrated that we were trying to make changes in good faith. And for all our other fights, the Moreland neighbors were the most enthusiastic advocates for change. And you'll have similar experiences. I will give you the advice that repurposing a school in a high-end neighborhood is not a good place to start, probably not a good place to end either. It was a political nightmare. And then you've got all these zoning changes and 2-family live-work districts and overlay districts and stuff that planners love, but sounds very abstract and very scary to residents. So it is up to you all to say, well, here's what it means, and here's how we're going to make sure that the city doesn't abuse this zoning change. The lesson I learned from all this is that it is very risky for elected officials to be the face of each and every change. That's why you're needed. It's risky for them if they ever want to get reelected. And they usually get that pretty readily. And so you have a huge role. Finally, I would suggest that each investment has to link to the other ones around it. I hope you'll find enough ideas and enough money to do something in each neighborhood so that no neighborhood is feeling that they're being treated in a special way. But it all has to link together conceptually, and that's hard. And then you go out and you sell the story over and over to new residents, to residents who haven't been paying attention, to realtors, to developers, to the broader Cleveland community that think Shaker Heights and Cleveland Heights are down the tubes. It takes lots of time and lots of appearances. And again, you will be instrumental. So I guess I want to close with saying that I think that all first-ring suburbs, but particularly Cleveland Heights, Shaker Heights, and Lakewood are very special places. And we have to work to preserve what is so interesting and rich and diverse about these places, because we're surrounded by homogeneous suburbs that are ruining the countryside, and we need to get back focused on what we had initially. The work is very exhausting, but deeply satisfying. And my mission, every day I got up to this mission, and I'm guessing yours is no different, that I wanted to establish Shaker Heights as a national model of a successful, sustainable, integrated community. And I was thinking about racially integrated, but I think it has to be based on civic respect and financial, racial, ethnic, and religious diversity. So good luck, and we all are wishing the best of success to what you're about to do.
Judy, thank you. This was very inspirational. It's your hard act to follow. I'm Deanna Bremer Fisher, and I'm the Executive Director of FutureHeights. Whoop, went the wrong way. And I've been a Cleveland Heights resident for more than 20 years. And I love this community. I chose this community, and I know many of you did too. And I think that's probably why you're here tonight. So I want to tell you a few things. There are a lot of new faces in the room, a lot of people that I don't know yet. And so I want to tell you a little bit about Future Heights, tell you what we're working on, and tell you where we want to go from here. So let me start out by talking about one of our newer programs that we started in 2014 that we're really excited about, and this is our Neighborhood Mini Grants program. I love this program because we find so many interesting projects and ideas that we never would have thought about if we were to come up with these ideas, but they come from people in the neighborhoods. We started this program in the fall of 2014, and we now have given out more than $12,000 to about 16 projects throughout the community. And these are things like community gardens, they are special events such as the Noble Neighbors event that happened last weekend, and public art. People are always coming up with fascinating ideas, and we've got a process, we've got a committee that goes through it, and we have the honor of meeting all of the people in the neighborhoods and learning about their projects and helping them get them done. So this is something I'm very proud about that Future Heights is doing. Another aspect of the community building program that we started in 2014 is working directly with people in neighborhoods, and especially people who want to move their neighborhoods in new directions. And so we started this series of workshops called our community building workshops. And this is now the third year that we have done these workshops, and more than 45 people have gone through these workshops, and they live in Cleveland Heights neighborhoods throughout the city. And they go through a series of 6 workshops. They work on everything from leadership development to identifying the assets in their neighborhoods to figuring out what some next steps would be. And we just graduated our class just last month. And so many of them, several of them are here tonight, so thank you. And then let's talk a little bit about community planning. Future Heights was founded, and we are 15 years old. We were an advocacy organization, and we were very concerned about quality of life in our neighborhoods. And that is something that continues in Future Heights. In fall of 2015, we held our Reimagining Severance Forum, and it was hugely attended because people know that is one of the major concerns of this community is what's going to happen with Severance Town Center. There's a lot of vacancy there. That was built in the 1950s when the automobile was king, and we now realize that it would be perhaps better if it looked more like some of our other neighborhoods. So we want to reimagine it, and so we started a conversation, and the city is working on this right now. Second thing is the Viking Planner Study. We partnered with CSU and the Urban Studies program there, and they took a look at Cedar Lee and did a market study for us. And they looked at everything. They looked at infill housing. They looked at redevelopment opportunities. They looked at parking. They looked at safety. They looked at public spaces and gave us a really good plan that we can now add to some of the other plans that have been done on Cedar Lee. And this has been very informative to us as we've been looking at some of the vacancies on Lee and what can we do to fill those, and some of the other spaces there as well. And then there's our business support programs. Best of the Heights is one of my favorite programs because we get to recognize the contributions of the entrepreneurs in our community. And we're a community of small businesses. Most of the businesses here are independently owned. And they may not get much recognition for what they do, but they're a big factor in our quality of life here in Cleveland Heights. And so I love to do this program every year because we get to recognize them, and oftentimes it's the only time that they get together and be recognized. There are also a lot of other programs that we've been working on, special workshops targeted directly to business owners. In fact, this one on here is a signage merchandising workshop, but we have one coming up on business succession planning. It's a huge issue for small business owners. What do you do if you don't have a family member and you want to retire? So there are things that they need to think about that we're partnering with the Small Business Development Center to help them figure out. And then special events. We started our Hard Hat Happy Hours last year on Cedar Lee as they were going through their streetscape, and we're continuing it this year at Cedar Fairmount as they're going through their streetscape construction project. Just a fun event to get people to come out because, you know, let's face it, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get out there when you've got all the construction cones and equipment and sidewalks torn up, etc. But it's a lot of fun, and we'll do another one this summer. Future Heights is working to change the narrative of our community, and two of the programs that we have that do this are Heights Music Hop and the Heights Observer. So the Heights Music Hop is now 5 years old, and this year it's going to be in 3 business districts, September 7th through 9th in Coventry, Cedar Fairmount, and then Cedar Lee. And so this is a great way to showcase our community. This is a fun event. It attracts a lot of people from around the region. And really, even those of us who live here get to see our community in a new light. And then the Heights Observer, and it's a picture of Andrea Morrison. I know she's here tonight somewhere. This is a great program because it's about the community. We get to tell our own story here. We don't have to wait for somebody else to tell the story about our community because we have our own newspaper and we can tell our own stories. And it's a wonderful volunteer project, a great way for people to get involved. You can contribute a story. We have volunteer editors, and then we also have our volunteer distributors. So what I want to move to next, after I've told you a little bit about Future Heights, is I want to tell you about some of the developments in the city and talk a little bit about our situation. We listed some of our assets here. The city has just completed a master plan, and it just approved it in March. And that master plan, as well as a special committee that our city council got together, their Economic Development Advisory Committee, that met for about 7 months and talked about various issues in the community related to economic development. Both of those processes are now completed, and we have a master plan and we have some recommendations. And those processes looked very hard at some of our deficits as well as our assets, looking at them realistically. And this slide is a little overwhelming, and I'm not going to go into all the details here, but there were a lot of data that was shared in those reports. And it's all things that you may know about. You know that the city's losing population. That's not a surprise. But there, if you look at it even deeper, you see that there's a certain segment of the population that we are losing, or that the city of Cleveland, some of the Cleveland neighborhoods have and are attracting that we are not. And those are the younger millennials that we are not attracting yet to our city. So there's a challenge. There are also other factors here. We know that renting has increased in the city versus home ownership. We know that the perception of our school system is not as good as it could be. It's always going to be based on test scores, and if you look at test scores, our community is not going to stack up so well. You look at other factors such as income, and you see that our real income in the community is declining. You know that our tax burden is increasing, and you know that as we lose population and as we demolish more homes, that means that that tax burden is being shared by fewer and fewer people. You also know that this is primarily a bedroom community. We have primary residences, and it's our neighborhoods that we cherish, but that also means that we don't have a lot of industry here to support some of the tax burden. So all of this are things that we know, and perhaps a few things that might be surprising. The master plan, by the way, is online on the city's website. I'd encourage you to at least take a look at it. It is more than 250 pages. It is long, but they broke it up into sections. They got pretty pictures there as well as these charts. It is very readable, and it's worthwhile to take a look at it and take a hard look at the situation in our community. Also, the master plan has several goals, and I'm just going to show very quickly just a few of them here, because one of these goals, big goals, talks about having vibrant neighborhoods, and what does that mean? And there are several strategic goals that address those challenges. And then also, strong business districts. And these two really go hand in hand. In our work at Future Heights, working with neighborhood leaders, and every time we get a group of neighbors together, they inevitably start talking about the commercial districts that are nearby them. And are these places that make them proud? I mean, these are places that most visitors see first when they come into the community, or are they places where, gosh, I wish we had a coffee shop there. You know, I wish that, that our business district had the kind of wow factor that some of the places in the city now have. So there are some challenges here, but they're closely tied, because if you live near a business district that has the coffee shop and the bookstore and the gathering place, chances are your neighborhood is doing pretty well in terms of home value. When you look at those areas of our city, and this is primarily in the northern part of our city, where the business districts aren't doing as well, consequently, they're having a harder time selling their homes, and the home values are declining. And so this is something that we need to address. So one of the recommendations from both the master plan and from the Economic Development Advisory Committee is that the city take a look at having a Community Development Corporation, a CDC. And I want to spend just a little bit of time explaining what a CDC is, because I know that it's probably a new concept to a lot of folks. So let's talk a little bit about what is a CDC. There's an Ohio CDC Association, and they're based in Columbus, obviously. And Future Heights has just become a full-fledged member of the Ohio CDC Association. There are 45 members in Cuyahoga County, and some of them are banks. You can see the chart here. Some of them are banks. Some of them are housing focused. There's quite a number of them. There are 16 of them that are based in the city of Cleveland, so they represent different Cleveland neighborhoods. There are now 4 inner ring suburb CDCs: ourselves, Lakewood, Shaker Heights, and South Euclid all have CDCs. And these are nonprofit organizations, 501c3s. They're community-based. They are of and for the community, and they typically serve low-income areas or areas that have experienced significant disinvestment. And if we take a hard look at our community, we can say we're in an inner ring suburb and we have significant disinvestment in some areas. And so what does the CDC do? And so these are the names of some of those organizations, some of which you might recognize. And you can see that there's a variety of different things that they do. And the key is to be responsive to what your community needs. So they can do everything from working on economic development, housing development, whether it's new housing or rehab, streetscape improvements, neighborhood planning, placemaking, making places unique and special, and civic engagement, getting people involved. So there's a host of things that they do. Many of these things are things that Future Heights already does and are things that we can do more of, and that's what I want to tell you about now. So here's some examples of things that have been done in the city of Cleveland, and you think about some of these things, whether it's new housing construction that you see at the bottom there, or infill development, working with existing commercial structures and adding to them or rehabilitating them, working on streetscapes like in Gordon Square. Public art plays a big part in helping create unique places and make neighbors proud of being there and living there. And Ohio City, as you can see, is a real cheerleader for their neighborhood. And that is something that, as a CDC, Future Heights is doing. But it's all about partnerships, because none of the CDCs can do these things on their own. Of course, they're made up of the community, but they have to work with their city government, their school system. We're very fortunate in our community that we have so many capable partners. Many nonprofits who are here, including our special improvement districts and our neighborhood organizations. And we have many assets. So although when you look at the master plan and you can think about the deficits, we have to look at all of the assets that we have, and there are many. These pictures just show a few of them, and we talked about them here: our vibrant commercial districts, our parks, our arts, our diversity of architecture, our walkability, our bikeability. There are so many assets that this community has, but the most important asset that this community has is the people. Our people are our best asset that we have, and I've experienced this as the director of Future Heights, meeting so many very talented people who are willing to work very hard to make this place better. And many of you are sitting in the room right here, right now. That's why you came tonight. You came here because you're interested in our community, you care about it, and I care about it, and we want to make a difference, and all of you have talents, and many of you have worked with Future Heights on our board of directors, on our committees, on various projects that we have to make a difference in the community. So you're our strongest asset. And because of you, we are working on several areas this year that I want to share with you. And I'm very excited about these projects. And really, this is just a sampling of some of the things that we're working on, but these are some things that I'm very excited about. So if we look at neighborhood planning, and what does that mean? That means looking at your assets and thinking about what are the things that I'd like to have in my neighborhood? How would I like to change my neighborhood to make it better? This is what planning is all about. So this area of focus here, you may recognize as the Center Mayfield area. This is where Mayfield Road, Noble Road, and Warrensville, thank you, come together in this triangle here. And you may also know that we recently had a demolition of a significant commercial building in this area, the Center Mayfield building. And I personally was very sad to see this building go. I think if you look at any one of our commercial districts, there's always one or two buildings that is very significant, that kind of gives that area character. And for me, the Center Mayfield building was that building in this neighborhood. So I was very sad to see it go. But now that it's gone, what are we going to put there? It's privately owned property, and so there's some challenges there. If you remember, just a year ago, we were talking about the possibility of a multi-pump gas station and convenience store there. We know that that's not what the neighborhood wanted, but what do we want? So Future Heights held a meeting with several neighborhood residents and stakeholders just about a month or so ago to talk about this, to begin talking about what is it that people in this neighborhood would want. And so did some research, and here are some maps. This one is a land use plan. One of the things that you'll see is that in the center of the district there's all this light blue. That is city-owned property. And so that gives us an opportunity here in this district. You can perhaps see it clearer here when you look at all of the green in this map. So this actually shows the property owners, and you can see that these are city-owned sites, and you can see the housing around it, you can see the commercial areas, you can see the private property that is there, but you can also see that big swath of green there. And so we had a discussion, and we had several of our talented board members there who are architects and planners and know how to do these kinds of things. And we listened to neighbors, and we generated a bunch of ideas. So here are some of the ideas, and these are preliminary ideas, but this is a starting point. Possibly looking at cluster housing there, looking at the commercial properties that are there. Can they be enhanced? Can they be rehabilitated and spruced up? A new multi-purpose, multi-use building on that Center Mayfield site. Look at some of the city properties, and can they be cleaned up and reorganized? Can we add some signage, some green space, some public art to this area? And we can, and it's very important that we do, because this is an area that is a gateway to the Heights. This is the entrance to the Heights coming from the east. And it's also the entrance to the Noble neighborhood. So whatever we do here, and maybe it'll look something like this, maybe it won't, it's important to start the conversation, and that's what Future Heights is doing. So let's talk a little bit about placemaking, and this is the idea of making places special and unique by adding features to them that make people want to be there. And so this area, just to orient you, is in the Cedar Lee district, right by the Cedar Lee Theater. This is the space in the yellow dot there, is the space we're focusing on. And this is the connector between the parking in the back, the parking garage that was built several years ago, and the businesses on the street. And right now, this is what it looks like. It's looking a little tired these days. Could use some enhancement, because right now this is a place that people pass through. But there have been a lot of good ideas generated in several plans that have been done, and in the Viking Planner study that was done recently. There are lots of good ideas that we are thinking about and the community should be thinking about. Because if you look around the world for ideas, and here's some public spaces that serve a similar purpose to what that space at Cedar Lee serves, you can see that you can make spaces like this very inviting, with public art, with landscaping, with special events. There's lots that we can do there. So we are starting to work on this with the Special Improvement District, with the city, with Heights Arts that is also located in the Cedar Lee Theater building, to re-envision this area. We're starting to look at some grant funding. We've gotten a little bit of grant funding so far, and we're looking at some ideas right now that would be fairly quick and simple to do, so that as we further develop this plan, we'll be able to add to it. So if you look at the picture on the lower right, that is League Park, and you might notice the temporary murals that are there. That's an idea that we have explored for this mini park area, where we could create or install temporary art there that could enhance the space in the short term as we're working on a more comprehensive plan, and then perhaps could be moved to another area that we also want to enhance in the future. So that's placemaking. Now, our third initiative is around civic engagement. And civic engagement is something that Future Heights has been working on for a long time. And the area of focus for us right now is top of the hill, because as you all know, this is an area that the city is working on redeveloping right now. So this is an aerial map of it. You can show, or you can see the radius here, showing University Circle and how close it is to that epicenter of jobs and culture. And we really have a big opportunity here. This is the Cedar Fairmount neighborhood. As you know, it's currently undergoing a streetscape. This is before all that started to happen. It looks great here in these pictures, and it'll look even better when the streetscape is done. But we've got a lot to work with here. There is a great neighborhood here that we want to enhance with this development, and we're very conscious of the fact that whatever development that we do at Top of the Hill, it needs to be really good, and it needs to meet the needs of the community. And so here's another aerial view of the site, and you can see how much green space there is right now, and you can see how much parking, surface area parking there is right now. So for such a prominent location to have this little development is really problematic. This should be a more vibrant area, and with this new development, we believe that can happen. So Future Heights is very interested in seeing this development happen. As you may have read recently, the first developer that the city chose has backed out of the proposal, and now they are working with a new developer. Future Heights is interested in helping the city with this process, particularly with civic engagement. And we have said publicly that we are in support of development here. It's going to benefit the whole community to have this area developed. There are lots of other areas in the community that could be redeveloped. And in fact, you're sitting in one right now. as you may have heard, that this building is for sale. And so this is another site. And Future Heights has its offices here. And we are here with many of our cultural institutions. And we will be working on that process as well.
Part of the designing of tonight's program was really looking at what it means to have a progressive, active leader in city, and to have a CDC with a tremendous amount of vision and talent to be able to work in partnership to move things along. And so I do want to talk about what you can do to support the effort, but I also first just really need to talk about who is doing this work right now. So currently we have only 2 full-time staff members, and so I'm going to call some names. If you could stand and stay standing until I can see you. So Deanna and Sruthi, which is somewhere here. Sruthi's all the way in the way back. We have Kathleen Fant and Leslie Kaplansky. No. Okay. And I'm going to ask you to stay standing, because I would like to add to the people standing the staff of the Observer, so Bob Rosenbaum, and I don't know if Kim is here. Anyone else? Okay. And I would like to add, who? Jessica. And Jessica Shantz, our newest. Thank you. And I would like all of our board of directors to stand. So we have 20 board of directors. How many people are here today? Thank you. Nice. And then, yeah. And stay standing, because the last group is volunteers. So we have people who deliver the Observer, we have people who write for the Observer, we have people who come to our hard hat happy hours and set up and break down. Do we have any of those people here? And Jim Hankey? Yeah, sorry, from the Observer.
Still seeing some committee members next.
I know. And committee members, if you would like to stand as well, please. This is the last group. Thank you. I was like, there's a lot of you. Come on. So the reason I point out, now you guys can sit down. The reason I point this out is that there is a tremendous amount of work that we are already doing, and there is an amazing amount of work ahead of us. So, right, period.
Don't all leave.
And so right now, you know, what's the easiest access point to supporting the organization? And so I want to just take a brief moment to talk about my introduction to Future Heights. So I am literally born inside of a house in Cleveland Heights and raised here in Cleveland Heights. I left after high school, traveled extensively, went to college, settled on the West Coast in San Francisco, and I still missed Cleveland Heights. I missed lush streets. I missed people saying hi on the sidewalk to me. I missed affordability. I missed my family. And so finally it made no sense for me to be in San Francisco, and I came back to Cleveland Heights. And at that time, it was 11 years ago, Ohio City, Tremont, Detroit Shoreway, my siblings were all in those areas. Those were the hot areas to move to. And it was clear to me that Cleveland Heights was the place for me. I was kind of done with my city living stint. I think we all have one, and if we haven't, then you should have one. But then, Cleveland Heights is a fantastic place to come back to. I ended up marrying somebody I went to Roxborough Elementary, Middle, and Heights High School with. And we have a small business where we invest in homes literally within about a mile radius of our house, fixing them up, renting them out to people who add to the quality of life in our community. Fast forward about 11 years, and at this juncture, our rentals love the city, but what I'm sick of hearing are my friends who are born and raised in Cleveland Heights who are moving away. My family members who are born and raised in Cleveland Heights moving away. Sorry, I have a 5-month-old, so I'm incredibly emotional. I'm just gonna warn you now. And I'm sick of hearing that all of the investment is happening downtown or on the west side. I'm sick of hearing that disinvestment is going to just keep ramping up because we have a history of redlining that is not going to go away if we don't address it. I'm sick of hearing developers say, I don't know about Cleveland Heights. And so it became clear to me that I had to do something, right? Luckily for me, I attended a Heights Sustainability Network meeting soon after my first son was born, and was like, oh, great, there's people already doing something. I don't have to do it all by myself. And since becoming a member, and as well joining the board as a volunteer, it feels so good to know that there is a passionate and very capable group of people addressing these issues, and that I do not feel like I have to do anything massive alone. In fact, all of my skills and expertise are only leveraged because of all of the group of people who are dedicated to this work already. Which leads me to you and your membership. Membership is one of the things that helps us keep the doors open and supports the ongoing work of Future Heights. It creates a leveraged and organized political voice that we, as Future Heightsers, can advocate on behalf of. It makes all of our work more efficient and effective because we have an engaged, informed, and empowered citizenry from every level, and it supports us in doing what we're trying to do. We also, so this is going to be my invitation, we are kicking off our annual membership drive tonight. We have an initial $5,000 grant match. So if we are to raise $5,000 here tonight, then we get $10,000 to do this good work. $10,000. And so since we have a very diverse community and we believe in that, I just looked at how do we do this? How can we make this happen, right? And so I invite people who are not members to please sign up as a member, especially if you want to see some of this work happen. If you are a renewing member, please consider joining at a higher rate than you have previously. And if you are interested in championing one of our existing projects or initiatives, then please talk to me or Deanna so we can set up a meeting to find where your values align most with the work that we can do. So I was thinking about this morning, and my joining of Future Heights was this realization of I cannot do it all alone, but I know that we can do it all together. So if you have any questions, you'll notice that we do not have time, or we did not create space for a public Q&A, partially to honor the time that you have already spent with us. But the board members are all here, and we are all sticking around, so please, if you see somebody with a Future Heights name tag, ask us any questions. We're going to be here. Our membership table is at the back, and that will be staffed by Thomas Cheney and I believe Eli Auerbach.